and welcome to another episode of Honest Conversations with Charlotte Dixon. And today we have the brilliant Heather Thomson, CEO of Data Lab, joining us. Heather, thank you so much for coming on to talk to us today.
You're very welcome. Really delighted to be here. Thanks.
And for anyone that doesn't know what Data Lab is and the kind of work you do, could you just give us a brief background of what it's about?
We're one of 4 innovation centres funded by the Scottish Funding Council, and our role as the National Innovation Centre for Data and AI in Scotland is to help to connect the strengths of academia and industry to think about how we can ensure that the amazing work that's going on inside the walls of our universities and colleges is actually coming out into application, and that the research and development work that's happening is relevant to industry need. So we also play a big role in addressing the talent pipeline and the skills gap in data and AI, so helping to people to understand what are the skills that are needed now but also in the future. We run a series of training courses, and that the kind of skills work can be anything from that kind of citizen, what do you need to get by in life with AI, through to your students coming through universities and colleges, but what are the courses of today that are going to be really relevant and help you get a job when you come out the other side, through to leaders who are responsible for leading their organisation through this acceleration of change, which is very unavoidable at the moment. And then the third thing that we do is around our community. So the Data Lab community sits at the heart of the tech ecosystem. It has over 8,000 members now across 100 countries, and it's a platform for people to learn, to share knowledge, to develop skills, to look for jobs, and really just to keep the conversation going as things are changing so quickly.
Amazing. It's one of the biggest things right now. Everybody obviously is talking about AI, almost sort of tongue-in-cheek, put it up on LinkedIn recently. Did the meeting even happen if AI wasn't mentioned? You know, it feels like it's on everybody's lips, but it's also a huge stress for people right now. And I'm curious, from your perspective, how do you feel about AI? What do you think about it at the moment?
I think it presents a huge opportunity. Very exciting prospect. I think some of the projects that we work are involved in today are literally life-changing. I really like to take a balanced approach to things, and I think in the work that we do it's really important to promote that opportunity and that benefit and help people on the path, but it's also very important at the same time to ensure that people are using these tools legally, ethically, and that they have a deeper understanding of what's happening behind the wall, if you like, and that it's not just a magic box.
Yeah, and when you say life-changing, can you give us some examples?
We've been involved in the project for the last few years now with NHS Highlands and the Digital Health Innovation Centre and a number of European partners as well. And it's for the AICE, it's called the ICE project, so it's the AI, Artificial Intelligence Colon Assisted Endoscopy programme. And depending on how much you know about a colonoscopy and how invasive and uncomfortable that can be for patients, going in for that, the colon capsule allows somebody who requires that to swallow a smart pill that has a camera inside it. It travels down through their intestine, through their colon and out, and then the images are then used for diagnosis.
Wow.
So it's used for a much earlier detection. The number of people for that first, let's see if there's anything there, it's life-changing. It's freeing up beds, it's allowing things, diagnoses to be made earlier, and it's just for a patient it's a much better experience. So that's one of our healthcare. The other, a couple other healthcare ones in epilepsy, been involved with the Quarriers Centre, William Quarriers Centre, around developing it's almost like headgear that's worn to help predict when someone's going to have a seizure. We have AI assisted living and smart homes. Projects are about how we can help people live at home more independently for longer. Again, kind of saving bed space, but also giving people that independence for longer and confidence to be able to live along with the tools.
That's incredible. I used to work in hospitals, and I remember having calls every single night saying, do you have any beds free? How many beds do you have free? And every night we'd say, we can't take any. And it was always the same. We could never ever, because we were a psychiatric unit, but we were always asked because they were so desperate. So I can see that freeing up beds, it's not only life-changing for the individuals, but actually it's life-changing for all the other sort of knock-on wait lists and patients that are desperately in need of those resources. That's incredible.
For sure. And those kind of improved patient outcomes, I mean, I've spoken about kind of the physical, preventing people to have to physically be in hospital for treatment.
Yeah.
Therefore not needing a bed. But there's other ways that AI can be used. Some of the algorithms can be used for efficiently monitoring, like supply chain, if you like. So how can we allocate beds, and how can hospitals use the AI algorithms for better planning? A couple of months ago, I went to visit my parents, and my dad, just out of the blue, just threw this article in my face and said, "What are these? Like, these AI glasses, can you get me a pair?" And my dad's going to be 80 next year. And I was like, "What do you need these for?" And he'd been had an article written. So my father has macular degeneration, and his sight is failing quite quickly now. He doesn't have much vision at all. And he'd read, and he'd also seen a television programme where someone with severe sight impairment had got a pair of these AI glasses, and they were out in the world, and you were getting to see how they could help. And they were going into restaurants, and they were asking the glasses, "Hey Meta, can you tell me what's on the menu?" They stood at bus stops saying, "Could you tell me what bus number this is that's coming along?" In the kitchen, being able to read ingredients on labels and assisting with cooking. So we now have a pair of these AI glasses in our family, and they're currently under test. But actually for me, again, I use this word a lot in my role, but life-changing for people with sight impairment, the ability to kind of support them just in their everyday and help them get by with some things that would otherwise be very, very difficult, or potentially they just wouldn't do.
Yeah, that is incredible. And it really resonates with me what you said earlier about there's some huge benefits to AI and there's some huge challenges. And I almost feel like every time somebody talks about either the benefits or the challenges, it almost makes the conversation swing the other way to the opposite. And it feels like, especially right now, the attention is sort of more being drawn to the challenging aspects of AI, the ethics around it, especially some of the big tech bros who have questionable morals, I'd say. And I'm wondering how people should navigate that, because it feels really difficult. I mean, I myself, I want to be engaged in AI and learn from it. I know there are opportunities there, but then there's also this moral challenge. I'm just wondering how people should maybe approach this problem, if you have any thoughts on that.
From an organisational perspective, you need to think both internally and externally. But regardless of whether you're thinking about your team or whether you're thinking about your external stakeholders, one of the key things there is trust. And for AI to be used successfully, it's so important that you can build that trust and confidence. And the way to do that is by ensuring that systems are transparent, they're explainable, and they're easy to interact with. People understanding what data is being collected about them, people understanding that data is being used for. Actually, people just understanding that data is involved full stop. And it absolutely baffles me now that you can have significant conversations with people about AI and the word data doesn't come in once. And so I think it's really important for people to understand the important role that data plays in these systems.
Yeah.
I think bad actors are always going to be bad actors. And so, again, for me, that is about skills. It's about awareness. It's about literacy. It's empowering yourself as an individual to want to learn, to almost be on this lifelong learning and understanding that there's new systems coming in all the time. Don't just mindfully, come in, have a look at, play with something and start pressing buttons and entering data without understanding what the system is, who owns the system, where it's going. I read a really interesting article last night actually, and it was an example of someone in the States was given about when they went to their GP and the GP went in and they just said, oh, just to let you know, we're going to we use like kind of AI transcription service when you're in the doctors. So they had this AI transcription that was going to be taking notes, and this person is somebody who uses AI and is a supporter. You know, they're actually a master for AI. But their first question was, well, what is the system? And the GP was like, well, that doesn't matter. You don't need to know that. It's just an AI. And she was like, no, I absolutely need to know what the system is. I need to know what's happening to my data. And so I think that, like, when you're asking, you know, what's the advice, is ask the questions, dig deeper, understand how you're interacting with these systems, understand what the outcomes are, understand, well, what are the potential outcomes for this, good and bad. Skills is massive. Challenges I have is when there's big announcements made that say we need X thousand people or X million people AI literate or trained in AI skills by this date, 2030, whatever. And you say, well, what do you mean by that? Because it's not a one size fits all. When you're talking about literacy, like, who needs to know what? Someone who's writing these systems and they're producers and they're coding, they need to know a whole set of different skills. To somebody who needs to be able to just interact with digital banking, to somebody who might be using spreadsheets at their work, which have got some AI plug-in to them. So that kind of everyone needs to be digitally literate. Everybody, I would argue, needs to be data literate. And everybody is now starting to just AI skills coming into that. But what we mean by that very much should vary depending on the person and how they want to use it individually, but also how they would use it in the job.
Yeah. If somebody is completely new to, I guess, the world of AI and tech, and they have, say, found an AI tool online, and they're thinking, somebody has told me I need to think about data carefully, what would be their first steps to really finding out? Is it in the small print? Is it that it would be reviews online? Is there... Where would they start? What would they literally do to look into the data?
Yeah, I mean, every kind of trusted supplier, you would expect to have privacy agreement that talks about what data they're collecting, and how that data is being used, how it's being shared. Certainly with the large language models, one of the things that people often don't understand when they're thrown in these questions or they're uploading documents is that a lot of these systems will be taking that and then using it to retrain the models so that the models get better. Now, in some cases that's fine, you know, it doesn't matter, but if people are uploading confidential data, personal data, banking details, that's then going out into the big wide world, you know, where that's going to end up. And people are doing that blindly because they just don't realise how these systems, we've got this ChatGPT, we can ask it anything, you know, and it'll tell us anything, but actually what information are you sharing with that, and how is it being used? So I think yes, everybody has a responsibility. These providers have a responsibility to tell you, and like you say, quite often it might not be that easy to find. When you talk about reviews, again, having a conversation with someone a few weeks ago, and they were highlighting the consideration that you could put the same question into 3 or 4 different tools, and you'll get back different answers as a result of the training data that they're using, but also who the owner is and kind of their kind of moral compass around the direction that you want to go in. So there's a lot of things to consider, and you know, there isn't anything I can say in this discussion that will say do X, Y, Z, and then you'll be 100% safe. It's all about empowering yourself. It's about upskilling. It's about understanding. It's about raising awareness, and it's about asking the questions.
There's huge biases. One of my favourite ones to pick out is when people type in leadership online and they say, well, they ask an AI model to create them a caricature of leadership, and it's all white men in their like 50s. That's the caricature that AI comes up with, and of course we know that not to be true, but part of me thinks, if we couldn't we en masse put in a load of stuff that's more representative of society into AI, and would it learn from it, or is it that it's so far gone that that's not even a possibility? Like, could we influence it?
Absolutely, the systems are learning all the time. I mean, it depends what system you're talking about, and how much data we're talking about, and how much data how much data is there to start with, that you would need additional data to then be able to counteract any bias. But it's a really, really important point that you make. And that's from an organisational level, when people are starting to build their own systems, build their own agents, starting to think about and understand bias, and understand how easy that is to ensure that you're working with diverse training samples, even to the point of there's the data that's going in, but also the teams that are being used. So if you're working with the team that are involved in building the system are not diverse, if there's not a diverse group of people, then that will cause challenges in itself. Some of the work that we've done under our data and AI skills framework actually evidenced that, and talked about different levels of organisation and the ability to consider diversity in recruitment, and understand the importance of that when building AI systems. It's important for everything, but in particular in building AI systems and working with data, how the kind of importance of diversity is amplified.
I think hearing that will be quite a relief to a lot of people, because it can, I think, at times feel like AI is this sort of tech that's transitioning and at great speed and evolving, but it's sort of out of our hands, and the idea that we can actually influence it feels quite reassuring.
They talk about technology not progressing on its own. So we can continue to develop technology, but on its own, it doesn't really make any difference. And where progress happens is where people have the skills and the confidence to use it well. So how that is applied, and I think for me that really puts it into a nutshell. And it goes back to your question around the kind of bad actors, the guardrails. It is a technology at the end of the day, and so how we understand it and how we choose to use it are the kind of two underpinning factors.
If there are leaders, and I think actually especially middle managers, who have an interesting challenge right now in having the remit of supporting everyone to adopt AI, but also perhaps sometimes feeling like it's quite a challenge for them personally themselves, because this is a new era we're in, what would be your sort of top tips or bit of advice for those people that are trying to support adoption in their businesses or in their organisation?
I would say build your networks, lean on communities. I think everybody's in the same situation right now. Everybody's kind of fumbling about with this, trying to understand what does it mean for them as an individual, what does it mean for their organisation, what does it mean for the kind of wider economy. And people really want to share and learn. There's an opportunity to be sharing use cases, understand the art of the possible, because quite often with AI it is about the art. If people don't have that kind of, they're not really into like following the trends of what's coming out and they wouldn't even begin to consider that things could be done with AI. Number one pieces of advice is start with the problems, not the tools. So don't take the approach of what can we do with AI, or how can we use AI in our business. You really want to take the approach of what business problems do we have, or what are our challenges, and then the next question is, could AI be a solution to this? Because quite often the answer is no. More and more the answer is yes, or with certain conditions in place. But we would always suggest the approach is start with the problem. I think the other thing is about going back to what I mentioned previously about that building trust. Building trust, you don't want people in your organisation to feel like AI is being done to them. You want them to feel like it's a journey that they're being taken on, that they're part of that journey, that you understand, coming in and saying, right, from now on we're going to start using this system, without actually understanding the implications that might have for some people in your organisation. So bring them into the loop when you're starting to understand, well, what are the problems? What are the day-to-day things that we could support you with, which would free you up to do the more challenging things or the part of your job that you enjoy. And we've not really touched too much on it. Surprisingly, you haven't asked me a question about job displacement and people being redundant, because that comes up everywhere. But just to kind of touch on that one a little bit from a leadership perspective, at the moment, all of the evidence is showing that AI is most effective when there's still a human in the loop. Okay, and so it's about thinking about how can we use AI to augment, how can we use AI to allow people to spend less time on the more mundane, repetitive, and free them up for the more higher skilled roles, the more valuable work that they will enjoy doing, which again then has a positive impact on retention and attrition rates. And start small, because what will happen is when you start to think, okay, what are our business challenges? You'll come up, we have people come to us all the time. We've just been running an AI adoption program and put a call out to people to come to us with challenges that we could help them to solve and explore whether AI might be a solution to that. And they're coming with like 10, 20 problems. Right? Start with one thing, one or two things, do them well, evaluate them. You need to be evaluating the return on investment. Let's not just be bringing AI into the business for the sake of it. How do we evaluate where we can really make a difference, and how can we measure the impact that it's having before we then move on to the next thing?
As you were mentioning the bringing people along with you, it just reminded me of one of the organisations I was working with, and someone from the tech team said, I don't understand, we're giving them all these resources, they're really good resources, they're really well explained. And then they came into one of the workshops and heard people, expressing their challenges around AI, and they left saying, oh, I didn't realise we are bombarding people with information. And actually, like you say, they need to start with one thing, just one. They don't need a whole range of things because a lot of the time when I'm having conversations with people about AI adoption, they're saying, I just feel really overwhelmed. And it's sort of at all levels of organisations, there's this feeling of overwhelmed. And I'm not surprised. I think even just generally anybody in their home life would feel overwhelmed with AI, because there are so many tools out there. And also, I think so many promises of solutions that we didn't know. It's almost like going into, IKEA or Lakeland and seeing gadgets that you didn't know you needed. That's what it feels like sometimes with AI.
Yeah, it's a really important point that I'd say one of the other pitfalls that we see quite frequently are organisations where leaders are potentially, they see all of this happening, they know they have to get on board, they understand that, and for me, this is actually a kind of promotion, is don't sit back, this stuff isn't going away, right? So as a leader, it's on you to understand where it fits into your business. You can't just shut your eyes and pretend that it's all going to pass you by, right? From a competitive advantage perspective, from a staff retention perspective, so many reasons. Like, as a leader, it's your responsibility to understand how this fits into your organisation. But the other side of that, so you get the people who are just like, right, we're not using AI. We've told everyone, we'll put in our policy, don't use AI. What happens there is everybody starts squirreling away, doing their own things, and then you have no control over what is being done. You very much will end up in a situation where people are uploading personal and confidential documents because you haven't introduced it in a safe and responsible way. It's not part of any strategy. You're not giving your staff any training. So everybody's kind of just dabbling around, playing around, but without actually fully understanding the impact that might have.
Yeah.
So very much it's about having a strategy, having an implementation plan, ensuring, as I said to you before, leaders, you can invest in all the technology you want, but if you're not providing people with the skills and the confidence to use them, they're either not going to use them, or they're not going to be using them most effectively, or potentially they're going to be creating risk within your organisation. So there's that kind of polar, we speak a lot of polar opposites, that we're not touching this, we're not using this, it's not for us to, we're going to have everything, and then everybody in an organisation is just like sitting there like, where do we even start? And then they don't use it.
I feel like the range of topics we've covered in just this one short conversation just shows what leaders are grappling with right now, because there is what do we use? How do we use it? Are people using it in a safe way? And then there's how do we get people on board to use it when they potentially are feeling quite resistant? And then there's the extra element, I'm glad you brought it up, about retention, and also realistically, although there's a recruitment side, there's also a sort of redundancies challenge as well, where I know some organisations have had lots of redundancies, and I find myself saying to people, when you think about including AI in your strategy, that's great, and obviously it's going to keep you competitive, and like you say, you need to start with the problem, not the solution, to integrate AI. But there also needs to be a conversation with your team about sort of role evolution, I would call it, like a real honest, open conversation about, when we introduce this AI, this is what your job role is going to look like in the future. This is what we anticipate for you. Because I cannot tell you how many organisations I've been in where the leaders have said redundancies aren't a risk here, and nobody's worried about that. And then you talk to the team and they say, I'm actually worried it's going to replace me. And for some of them that will be true, for some of them that won't. That is just an unfounded fear. But I sort of, my plea to leaders is to have those conversations around what roles will look like in the future. And even if we don't know exactly what they're going to look like, because we may not until we've introduced some tools, just to think about the journey, and almost, like you say, bringing along your team with you on that journey, so you're all on it together, rather than feeling done to and then potentially pushed out, I think is the risk a lot of organisations are facing right now. But it feels like a very tense kind of challenge that people face, and it's going to be interesting, I think, over this year and next year, see how this keeps evolving, because as we know, it will always evolve, and people will fluctuate in where they sit on different opinions and different tools that they use and approaches they take.
There's a couple of things on that. I think if the organisational strategy is we want to save money and we want to cut jobs, then that's what's going to happen. Okay, but what the organisations we talk about, it's not about cutting jobs, it's about productivity, but it's about how can we, it's about competitive advantage, and how are we able to do things that we otherwise wouldn't be able to do. It kind of goes back to that understanding and awareness piece, that these AI systems don't work on their own. So if you think about, at the moment, the top topic is like agentic AI, the agents, and having a kind of human AI agent working together. 2 years ago, there was no role for someone to manage an AI agent, so although there's roles that are being made redundant and are likely to continue to be made redundant, there are new roles that we would never have even imagined a few years ago. And so it's about critical thinking, it's about problem solving, it's about understanding bias, it's about being able to challenge and not just accept that the answer on the screen, just because the computer said it was this, it's this, and that is going to become more and more and more important, is that people have that. And when people say to me, everybody's going to lose their job, or people are going to lose my job to AI, I would counter that and say, I wouldn't be so worried about losing your job to AI. I would be more worried about losing your job to someone who is literate to enable them to interact and work with those systems. Because there will always be jobs, just maybe not the job that you're doing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. It's been so wonderful to be able to get your insights into data and everything about the the sort of way to approach AI. There are, I mean, as I said, there's so many sort of different pockets that I think people are being challenged with right now. It's just really helpful to hear some insights from someone who gets it, who has an understanding and a knowledge of AI and data. So thank you so much. It's been lovely having you on.